Hello and welcome to TVOL, where we talk about tactics and their evolution. Today we're going to be focusing on a match between Manchester United and Manchester City, which resulted, of course it did, in a comprehensive victory 2-0 to Manchester City, the citizens. Before moving on to the main event, we're going to be taking a look at the pre-match context, the build-up to the match, focusing on a Manchester United perspective, a team having generated a lot of debate recently. And here what we're looking at is outcome in the blue as measured by goal difference, the difference between goals scored and goals conceded, +4 versus Leeds, -5 versus Liverpool, for example. But arguably a better measure of underlying performance is the difference between expected goals scored and expected goals conceded. And here you can see a very wobbly underlying performance from a Man United perspective. The especially concerning result came against Liverpool, but you can see the worrying trend in the form of the match versus Leicester, but also before that versus Wolves. What we're looking at here is progressive passes. This is a measure of a team's ability or otherwise to successfully move the ball from the back to the front, from the defensive phase through the build-up phase into the attacking phase. United often accused of being relatively poor at this, and what we can see here is a negative trend. They are becoming less able in recent times to do that progressive build-up. Now we're taking a quick look at team strategies. A really quick look because it's a very simple picture here. United tried and failed to defend, City attacked. United, having toyed with recent times with a back three, which they deployed against Manchester City somewhat unsuccessfully. United were pinned back for not all, but the majority of the match, losing the possession battle, not unexpectedly. And here we can see through the wonderful website whoscored.com a visual through data representation of United pinned back and under siege. Now we're going to measure team performance, looking at the overall metrics of expected goals, possession, number of passes, and then looking at the efficiency of those things. So first of all, Manchester City won the XG battle. They also won the battle of possession, not unexpectedly so. They had an overwhelmingly higher number of completed passes, also not surprising. What's more important is to look at the extent to which each team was efficient in their use of the ball. And we can see here that Manchester City were more efficient. They created more progressive passes from the total of passes that they made overall versus Manchester United. They were more efficient in moving the ball into the final third, that's the 8% versus the 5.1%. And lastly, and ultimately most importantly, were they more efficient in creating the potential for opportunities as measured by passes and crosses into the penalty box? Answer, yes, absolutely. They were twice as efficient in their use of the ball in that regard. Now why? Why did it result in such a one-sided contest in this circumstance? We're going to be looking at the exciting part, which is how the match played out in detail. And we have 3 points, the first of which is that Manchester United had a naive plan to contain Manchester City. Because that plan seemed to be centred on the ability of Greenwood, fantastic player otherwise, to contain, from a defensive point of view, Rodri. So they played a diamond in midfield, and the idea, as you can see through this rudimentary illustration, was that Greenwood was supposed to be marking Rodri out of the match. He didn't. You can see that in the early stages of the match, as in the first 60 seconds, Greenwood stuck to his task remarkably well, following Rodri around the centre circle. Many had argued before the match that this was the key to preventing Manchester City playing and progressing the ball up the field. Greenwood continued to stick to his task. 30 seconds later, and what he was doing here is blocking off the pass into Rodri, thus forcing the magnificent Cancelo into a relatively long and relatively high risk pass behind, I think in this case, looking for Foden. So far so good. Again, only 90 seconds in this match, and we probably all know what happened later. But again, Greenwood is tasked with this, and he does it, at least in the early stages of the match. We can see here the ball is at the feet of the central defender for Manchester City, Ruben Dias, and he has options to his right-hand side, but they are regressive options in the sense of he's going to circulate from the left-hand side to the right-hand side. He doesn't have Rodri, the pivot, to work the ball through because Greenwood is still being disciplined. Presumably, he has been asked to try to cover for Rodri as part of the defensive plan. But 2 minutes and 12 seconds into the match, you can already see that Greenwood is starting to waver, to get distracted from his objective of marking Rodri out of the game. He has presumably not been trained in this art extensively and intensively. And what happens is that Greenwood switches on and switches off from this defensive responsibility, which is presumably not the plan. And when he fails to man mark effectively Rodri, rather than arguably covering for the space, in this case in front of Rodri, then Mr. Rodri is pretty easily able to switch a play left, switch a play right, and these switches of play become key for City. Now let's take a look at an excellent demonstration of the naivety of the Manchester United approach. Greenwood, in the centre of the screen, is tightly marking Rodri at this point in time. City have the ball, they can play it left, they can play it right, but they can't, crucially at this point in time, play it through their key pivot and progress from there. The ball makes its way to the left-hand side, just in field, in fact, with Cancelo in a position that he often finds himself in. He is in a moment going to play the ball to Gundogan, and there isn't especially an obvious danger to the United back line, but Greenwood is keen. You can see already from his body position that he's shifting towards the left-hand side of the screen. He wants to block off the pass between Cancelo and Gundogan. But of course what he's going to do then is neglect his duties to cover the path into Rodri. So he actually ends up doing too much pressing, or too much attempted pressing in this case. The ball goes into Gundogan, he plays it back to Cancelo, who then has a really easy pass into Rodri. Why? Because Greenwood is shuttling back and forward in order to try and prevent City from moving the ball around him. But because no one else is pressing, they're holding their position. All Greenwood is doing from shuttling left to shuttling right primarily is wasting energy. And what City do through Rodri in possession is they manage to switch the ball from the left to the right hand side repeatedly through the match, which ends up leading to both of the goals. So they shift the ball left, Man United move left, the defence in the midfield at least, they shift the ball right, and United correspond with that. And what happens is that, partly due to the fact that they're playing wing backs, there ends up being a lot of space on the left and on the right hand side for Walker to do damage with his crossing, and for Cancelo as well, which as we all know resulted in 2 goals for City. And this pattern continues throughout the entirety of the second half. At times Greenwood somewhat effectively switches on to his role, then he switches off, and so on and so forth. He's not especially effective at that role anyway, but when he does stand off Rodri, then really City have the freedom of the park. They can switch the play, they can find their fullbacks, in the case of Cancelo, who inverts at times, as in comes in field at times in this match, but mainly he's holding the width, as is Walker on the right hand side. So City don't follow that same pattern, because in this case they successfully exploit the spaces that open up to the left and to the right of United's 5-man defence. We're now going to take a look at the second tactical theme covered in this video, Manchester United's poor build-up in controlled possession. Alex Stewart at Tifo, the YouTube channel, has repeatedly pointed out McTominay's curious inability to find the right space on the field in order to take possession from a teammate who is deeper at the time. So he doesn't pick up these sorts of positions, he doesn't pick up those sorts of positions And let's now take a look at some real-life examples of that from this match. Amusing examples, I would suggest. McTominay here is in the, as they describe it, cover shadow of Bernardo Silva, a technically excellent player, but also a defensively excellent one. Lindelof is pointing at something. Bailly is also pointing at something. What are they pointing at? Where McTominay should be, where he should be idling, in order to receive the ball. Here's a box in order to more precisely define. Unfortunately, the box was not available to McTominay during this match. I am picking on McTominay. He is, generally speaking, an excellent footballer, of course, but this is something that he fails to do quite often. We can see that play progresses. It ends up with De Gea, who has his, I'm going to call them the WTF De Gea hands out, because he is wondering what on earth is going on. United should be able to progress the ball from this point up the field without kicking it long. McTominay is looking in the other direction. And now the third and final tactical theme, City's management of the transition from being with the ball to being without the ball and adopting a defensive shape. And what a defensive shape it is, a 3-5 block. It seems incredible the way in which they're able to synchronise this transition. United here winning the ball back, goes through Ronaldo, goes through Fred, Fernandes and Greenwood. And here you can see the positions that City take up. They do this with remarkable regularity. Take a look at a couple of examples of this from the match. United win the ball through a combination of Wan-Bissaka and Fernandes deep in the right back spot. Fred, highlighted, is going to play a key role, believe it or not, in progressing the ball up the field as part of this counter-attack. So Fernandes ends up playing the ball into Fred. Fred has recognised the situation developing, moves towards the ball. Fred receives the ball and starts to attract Manchester City players towards him in order to challenge. Clearly, United players around him are seeing this as a trigger for a counter-attack. So we're going to see Greenwood, for example, on his bike. Fernandes is going to play a key role with Fred in order to progress the ball up the field. We can also see on the far-hand side Shaw being highlighted, because he's going to be key in this potential counter-attack. And of course Ronaldo. United have the ball, and so Ronaldo comes alive because that is his role in the team. Fred then plays a cheeky back heel. You heard that correctly, cheeky back heel from Fred. He's going to play that cheeky back heel into Fernandes, who's going to progress the play from there. Fernandes collects the ball from Fred, and he then looks to play the ball off Ronaldo as a 1-2, which they do. Ronaldo in the centre of the picture. Shaw towards the left-hand side recognises that he's going to be part of this counter-attack. Fernandes picks up the ball from Ronaldo and is going to look out to Shaw. Fernandes, having played the 1-2 into Ronaldo, having returned the ball to Fernandes. Ronaldo and Fred are going to support this ultimately doomed counter-attack. Fernandes is going to play the ball out to Shaw on the left-hand side in what is presumably a rehearsed routine. Lots of people say United don't have rehearsed routines, but clearly they do, especially through the use of Shaw. Manchester City have routines of their own. Of course they have attacking routines, and these are often discussed in tactical circles, but clearly they have defensive routines as well. Here we can see Jesus intercepting the ball from Shaw as he moves up the right hand side of the pitch. So that the counter-attack has broken down. But the thing that's potentially more interesting than Jesus winning the ball, other than his defensive diligence, is the fluid way in which Manchester City transform from attacking into counter-pressing into a defensive formation. And we can see here Walker, Stones and Diaz forming the beginnings of that 3-2 block. Moving back now, we looked at this illustration before. Let's look at how it pans out in real life. United win the ball on the left-hand side. Ronaldo is usefully in a deep position. He is going to play the ball into Fred, who again is useful at progressing the ball upfield. And if you look at the statistics that Fred puts up and the numbers that he achieves, he is in fact, he looks like an awkward player at times, but he is in fact useful at progressing the ball. An excellent turn by Fred, yes, again, you heard that correctly, an excellent turn by Fred. Usefully opens up the field for United and enables them to progress on their dangerous counter-attacking pursuit, supported by Fernandes, Greenwood and Ronaldo. The way in which City manage these transitions and counter these counter-attacks really is a work of art. In this case, Walker intercepts the wayward ball from Fernandes on the right-hand side in a similar way to Jesus did in the previous clip. But what's most important is that they have this 3-5 block that they've clearly worked in training. They've been doing it many times. They did it under the games in lockdown, for example. It's clearly something that has been perfected over time to get away from the defensive deficiencies that they had before. And thank you for watching, and welcome again to TiVo, where we talk about tactics and their evolution. Please like this video, please subscribe to this channel, and we will see you next time.